It started with a hard, deliberate knock. One of those that makes your stomach tighten before your brain catches up. The kind of knock that tells you this isn't good. Then, with a thud that rattled the hinges, the front door flew open, and in marched 3 men in identical HOA-branded polos, shouting over each other and waving a sheet of paper they claimed was a warrant. For a second, I just stood there, stunned. Was this really happening? Had the neighborhood committee just launched a full-blown raid on my living room? Here's the thing, they picked the wrong house and definitely the wrong guy. I'm Daniel Carter, 35 years as a defense attorney across 3 states, and now a retiree with more experience in courtroom showdowns than most of these clipboard commandos have in life. I bought a modest home in Maple Ridge Estates thinking I'd finally earned a little peace. Somewhere to ride my Harley, host weekend barbecues, and enjoy quiet evenings with friends. The real estate agent had downplayed the HOA like it was some friendly neighborhood watch. Just folks making sure the lawn stayed green and nobody painted their house electric blue. I didn't give it a second thought. I should have. See, me and my friends were not your typical retirees. We call ourselves the Iron Eagles. Wallace, a former state Supreme Court judge. Thomas, a retired CFO with nerves of steel. And Eric, an ex-FBI cybercrime specialist who still behaves like he's deep undercover anytime someone posts a meme. We spend our weekends in my garage, fixing up bikes, flipping steaks, and sharing war stories. Nothing illegal, nothing loud, just living. We weren't bothering anyone. Enter Leonard Barnes, the self-anointed overlord of the HOA. A former mid-tier office manager with a Napoleon complex and a love of rules no one asked for. Less than a month after I moved in, he was on my porch, frowning like I'd insulted his mother. "Mr. Carter," he declared, "you're in violation." He might as well have been reading from a sentencing report. Turns out my garage door was the wrong beige. My mailbox didn't meet some arbitrary spec. The trash bins? They were visible from the street for less than half an hour. I thought, fine, I'll play nice. I repainted the garage, changed the mailbox, and nearly pulled a muscle dragging the bins back in on time. But it didn't stop there. Suddenly, my hedges were overgrown by an inch. My bird feeder was attracting aggressive wildlife. And the crown jewel, my Harley, was labeled a visual disturbance and ordered out of sight. Each so-called violation came with a fine, and each fine was steeper than the last. When I had the guys over for burgers and beers, Barnes claimed I was running a business. He filed a complaint that my wind chimes were too loud. Then one night while we were tuning Wallace's bike, I threw down another notice on the bench. "He says I'm only allowed 2 visitors a month now," I muttered. Wallace just looked up and said, "If you let these people bully you, they'll drain you dry." That same night, 3 of them, Barnes' little enforcers, started creeping around my fence, snapping photos like they were staking out a crime scene. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" I asked. The tallest one mumbled something about unauthorized gatherings. It was ridiculous, but the tension was real. This wasn't about property upkeep. It was about control. The fines started stacking up fast. Nearly $12,000 within weeks, all for made-up infractions. I tried to challenge it at the next HOA meeting, but Barnes had that rigged too. Anyone with unresolved violations, like me, wasn't allowed to speak. Silenced by design. And then I realized it wasn't just me. One morning, I saw Grace Simmons, the elderly widow across the street, sitting on her porch with a letter trembling in her hands. She looked up at me, tears tracking down her face. "They're going to take my house," she whispered. Her violations? Out-of-season garden plants. Christmas lights that stayed up a few days too long. Driveway dirt buildup. Total nonsense. That was the moment it all clicked. Barnes wasn't just enforcing rules. He was targeting people. The lonely, the elderly, anyone who didn't have the energy or resources to fight back. That's when I decided we weren't going to take it anymore. They say retirement is when life slows down, but not in Maple Ridge. It all began with a few whispers, quiet grumblings about HOA fees mysteriously rising. Nobody could quite explain where the money was going. But when my neighbor Eric, tech-savvy and nosy in all the right ways, offered to take a closer look at the HOA's finances, We couldn't resist. Eric wasn't alone for long. Thomas joined in, tracing the trail of transactions like a bloodhound. Within days, they uncovered more shady business than I ever thought possible. In just 2 years, our fees had nearly tripled. Reserve funds had ballooned beyond $500,000. And yet, our streets still had potholes. The pool remained closed, and the clubhouse roof was still leaking. Eric dug deeper and found damning emails, communications between our HOA president, Barnes, and fake consulting companies. Clear signs of money laundering. Then came the kicker. A certified letter delivered to my door accusing me of running a commercial business. All because I hosted weekend BBQs for the neighborhood. The letter slapped me with a $5,000 fine and hinted at legal action. That was the last straw. We decided it was time to get serious. Old school. We installed security cameras all around my property. Good thing, too, because just a few days later, while I was helping out at the Veterans Center, I got an alert on my phone. Live footage showed 3 men, Barnes lackeys, breaking into my house, rifling through drawers and boxes. I rushed home to find Officer Ramirez already there, clearly uncomfortable. They claim they had HOA permission, he said, barely making eye contact. Permission doesn't override state law, I shot back. This is straight-up burglary. He wrote a report, but just like before, no arrests. My Harley had new scratches. Some of my tools were missing. I was furious. That night, my daughter Emily, tough as nails and just as sharp, sat with me and combed through the HOA bylaws. They can't do this, she said. They need a real emergency to enter someone's home. This was illegal. The Iron Eagles, our little informal crew of determined neighbors, regrouped. Frank uncovered documents showing Barnes' wife was tied to dummy corporations pulling funds from the HOA. Bill dug up property records. Barnes had quietly bought 3 luxury rentals. The scheme was coming into focus. Then came the break we needed. Emily's friend, a city hall clerk, revealed that Sunrise Holdings LLC, a company that had been buying up foreclosed homes, was also linked to Barnes. The scam was horrifying. They were targeting elderly residents, slapping them with fake violations, fining them into foreclosure, and flipping their homes for profit. We needed proof. That's when Barnes' own assistant, Karen, showed up. Tired of his lies, she handed me a key to his office. Inside was a folder labeled Special Projects. It had everything: real ledgers, off-the-book payments, and internal communications. It was the smoking gun. Naturally, Barnes retaliated hard. I was hit with a $15,000 fine. Then his right-hand man, Scott Doyle, broke into my house again. This time with 2 enforcers, and took my TV, claiming it was evidence. But this time, when the cops arrived, they found the Iron Eagles waiting. Our bikes blocked the driveway. Cameras were rolling. Dozens of neighbors had gathered. Ramirez couldn't ignore it anymore. He had to take statements. Suddenly, it was an actual investigation. We launched a website and made everything public: documents, videos, lists of fraudulent fines. The community exploded. Turns out, almost everyone had a Barnes nightmare. A local reporter named Dana Howard picked up the story. Within a week, the headline read, "Corruption Scandal Rocks Maple Ridge HOA." Barnes panicked. He called a press conference, blaming disruptive elements. But it backfired. Dana started digging into his allies and discovered Police Captain Nolan, Barnes' old golf buddy, was a silent partner in Sunrise Holdings. State authorities stepped in. Nolan was suspended. Barnes and his board were indicted for embezzlement, fraud, and elder abuse. But they weren't done. Sunrise Holdings tried to buy out HOA debts and force foreclosures anyway. That's when my wife, Susan, caught something everyone missed. If the original fines were fraudulent, the liens they were based on were invalid. That single detail stopped the takeover in its tracks. Dana exposed deeper layers of corruption. Sunrise tied to a whole network of dirty officials. The entire operation collapsed. The HOA was restructured. Fees were slashed. Power reined in. Grace, our elderly neighbor who'd nearly lost her house, got to stay. Those who had been forced out received restitution. We celebrated that summer with the biggest block party in the neighborhood's history. Grace hugged me and whispered, "You saved our homes, Daniel." But it wasn't just me. It was all of us. We simply refused to be intimidated. Sometimes that's all it takes. Later, around the fire pit, Thomas raised his glass and said, "Daniel Carter can't mind his own business, even in retirement." We laughed. But deep down, I knew we hadn't just exposed corruption. We'd reclaimed our community. And if another power-hungry bully ever tries again, the Iron Eagles, gray hair, aching joints, and all will be ready to ride.